The outside people, they're here. Who are they and what do they want? We'll break it down next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Nebraska is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase.
All right, welcome. Happy Wednesday. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone, and Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Let's talk about the news that broke minutes after we were finished recording the episode yesterday when we talked about the Bobs. The Bobs are coming in to evaluate some things. Well, we now know the identity of at least one of the Bobs and maybe both of the Bobs.
I think we know both.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. I think we know both of the Bobs. The Bobs are Dana and Phil. So not exactly Bob and Bob, but Dana and Phil.
Right. The news came at before 9 a.m. on Monday morning that Dana Holgorsen, the former head coach at Houston in West Virginia, offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, Mike Leach, protege, is in town, not just to do some work talking with the Nebraska people this week, but to serve as a consultant for the remainder of this season, an off-season consultant. So it's confirmed, first reported by Pete Thamel from ESPN. And this is not a situation where it's like, hey, why are you asking about this guy? He's only a backup. That was the talk early this season when the media was bringing up Micah Mazuka a lot and he wasn't playing. No, this is a real thing. This consultant, that's the title, but it's a bigger thing because Nebraska has a problem with its offense. And while Dana can't fix this in 3 weeks, he is a new voice, if not for the players, then he is certainly for the offensive coaches. And hey, don't kid yourself. He could be running the entire show next season on the offensive side. Yeah. And then the other guy in town, why don't you tell us about that?
That's Phil Snow. You know, I think that's more of I don't know if that has an earmark, you know, it has sort of a tag that doesn't have necessarily a tag on it aside from consultant. Hey, I'm going to bring in Matt Rhule. I'm going to bring in some people that I trust. And they're going to take a look at some things. Obviously Rhule and Snow have been together pretty much every coaching stop that Rhule has had, and was, you know, maybe going to be a part of this original staff here, and it didn't work out, and now he's sort of around. So we'll see how both of those roles evolve. Let's talk about Dana Holgorsen and functionally how that might work at Nebraska. You mentioned it, Mitch. We know his background. It's kind of in the air raid. It's they get things done his offense have traditionally gotten things done in a very, very different way than what Nebraska's offense is currently trying to do. So I think that's sort of notable, but mostly I think you bring a guy in like that because he has run successful offenses. He was rumored to be, joining the staff this past off season. That didn't work out. And he was just coming off of getting fired by Houston. So there was a lot, I think, on the plate there and a variety of different reasons why it didn't work out this year, but there's an opportunity now. And so you have 3 games left and a bye this season to maybe, I don't know how much Dana Holgorsen is able to put his fingerprints on this particular offense, but it's his ability to look around, see what people do well, and sort of evaluate things before, like you mentioned it, Mitch. I mean, you know, probably feel like he's going to be the offensive coordinator next year. You know, that's
it remains to be seen. Yeah, there's several pieces that would have to fall into place for that to happen. Like they have to pay him. They have to figure out what they're going to do with Marcus Satterfield. Holgorsen has to feel like he's a fit at Nebraska. I think because he's jumped around a little bit since he was fired less than a year ago by Houston. He worked at TCU as an analyst and advanced scout this year, and now he's moving on to join Matt Rhule or help Matt Rhule, advise Matt Rhule. It appears that Holgorsen has aspirations to get back to high levels of coaching, whether that's as a coordinator or a head coach, but he's not going to do that at a place where he doesn't feel like he can have success. So he's never been around the Big Ten style. Rhule is a defensive-oriented coach. We know that. Does that jive with what Dana wants to do on the offensive side? These are questions I think that he would have to answer before, even if Nebraska were to say, hey, we want you as the OC, we want you to run this offense, I think Dana would have to feel, I know Dana would have to feel comfortable with it too. So yeah, it's out there. It's definitely in the looming as a possibility, much more so than any kind of change like this on the defensive side. Like Nebraska's hoping on defense that it can hold on to Tony White. And I mean, the reality is if this team struggles down the stretch, continues to struggle down the stretch, then Tony White is not as unattractive of a head coaching candidate. But that's not why Phil Snow is in Lincoln. In fact, we don't know anything beyond just the information, and this was reported by Sam McEwen of the Omaha World-Herald, that Snow is here just looking things over this week. Not even necessarily in the same kind of a role on the defensive side for this month that Holgorsen is. Perhaps it is, but he might just be here for a few days to kind of give his observations to a coaching friend. So, and somebody who Matt Rhule looked up to in the business. Now, Matt was his boss at Temple and Baylor and Carolina, but Phil Snow is older and has a lot of experience. So there's a lot to be answered about where all of this goes.
Yeah. And so while we don't have a great grasp on what the role might be and how big it'll be for Phil Snow, I think we maybe have a better sense of that with Holgorsen. So, So let's talk about that. We've talked a little bit about styles. What Dana Holgorsen has done in his career is not anywhere close, like I said, to what Nebraska's been attempting to do here under Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield and even Glenn Thomas. So how does this work? How at all does this work? Is there a marriage to be had, or is this an all-out transition of power?
Well, I think that in theory it could work well, because if Holgorsen is just a voice to come in, watch film, examine what Nebraska's doing, see some practices, attend meetings, he's going to have a great perspective, because it's a different perspective than anyone's ever brought to this operation at Nebraska. This is a totally outside view coming in. And that sounds great. And I think he would probably be able to put together a list like, all right, I would do this. I would do this. You should consider this. You might want to implement X, Y, and Z. And if Marcus Satterfield and Glenn Thomas, to a lesser degree, are ready, willing, and able to listen and do what Dana Holgorsen would like, and take it without any kind of it being any kind of a threat, then great. It all works fine. But Satterfield understands, and Thomas understands, that they're replaceable, and this could be the guy to replace them. So that makes it a little more dicey, and it's not necessarily the easiest work environment to go through, especially when you're coming off this situation that Nebraska is, where you've had these 3 consecutive losses sandwiched between 2 byes.
Let me ask you this. Would you be surprised? And I don't like Marcus. I'm sorry. Dana Holgorsen would not be the person to probably step into this role in the final 3 games. But would you be surprised if there was like a slow transition over the 3 games that saw Marcus Satterfield shift out of offense or play calling duties, offensive coordinator duties? Like, I think that could happen. I don't know how that functionally works or how it works.
It sounds good, right? It's like, oh yeah, just going to slowly ease him out. So what does that mean? Like he calls the first quarter, and then like, so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that works in a 4-quarter of a game environment. And like the guy who does the majority of the game planning and sits down and writes out the script, like he's probably got to be the one calling the plays. And then what do you do from there? There's a rhythm and a flow to it. It's
Definitely.
kind of an art form, calling an offensive game. And if you don't know that you're going to be doing it in the next quarter or the next half or even the next week, it gets exponentially more difficult.
So yeah, I'm not sure how that looks, but I don't know. I feel like I guess I'll let people know where I what I thought about this when it first happened. Like I kind of feel like Marcus Satterfield will be. I still feel like Marcus Satterfield will be here next year. I don't know if he'll be the offensive I'm quite sure he won't be the offensive coordinator, but
I would agree.
I feel like he'll be here in some sort of role. So maybe there is an avenue there where you can, just sort of shift into whatever that might look like. There's a lot of pieces that are going to move this offseason. I feel like I think Nebraska has some coaches on their staff that are probably candidates for other jobs or better jobs, or some assistant coaches that are in line for lower level coordinator slots and stuff like that. So you might have some spots to sort of play with as you're bringing these two new people who have coordinator and head coach like proteges or like resumes. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how much space there is to work with.
Yeah, interesting in the case of Snow. I mean, he was essentially retired after Rhule was fired in Carolina, and he did go and work in like an advisory or analyst role for the Chicago Bears last season. But I think if he wanted to coordinate a defense somewhere, look, if Phil Stowe wanted to coordinate a defense somewhere, he would have been Nebraska's defensive coordinator when Matt Rhule came on in November of 2022. He could have come with him in the same way that Evan Cooper and Corey Campbell and those guys who were like on the plane with Rhule to Lincoln the day after the Iowa game or 2 days after the Iowa game. So he chose, because of the point in his career that he was at, that was not something he wanted to do. So has he had a change of heart? And if he has, like, all right, what would the role even be long term for him? I mean, to come in and coach linebackers, like Nebraska has a good young linebackers coach. I don't know, but that's much less of urgent nature than the stuff that's here on the offensive side. I would agree with you. I think Nebraska's coaching staff is going to look quite a bit different next year for a variety of reasons, some of which we're talking about here, and for other reasons that involve opportunities that some of the coaches that we haven't mentioned could have. So let's come back and continue this discussion about Dana Holgorsen and also about Matt Rhule and how, what's at stake, what this means, how challenging is this time in navigating this situation for a head coach like Matt Rhule. That's next. Okay, a timeout from the show to tell you guys about Hims. Sometimes, intimate moments, they happen spontaneously. I know your schedule's busy. If you don't have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED, through Hims, you can get a personalized treatment without setting foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. It provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% off. The process is 100% online. No insurance is needed. One low price covers everything. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's hims.com/lockedon for personalized ED treatments. The products mentioned here are chewable compounded products which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies on product and subscription plan.
All right, now I want to tell you a little bit about the FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL this weekend with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, or on a college football Saturday, or even, Mitch, in hockey.
Oh, yes. Look at that hockey puck.
You could just squeeze this hockey puck, this Locked On hockey puck, all day long because you're stressed out about where your bets are going to end up. But do so
or whatever else.
FanDuel Sportsbook. Head to FanDuel.com and join today. Once again, new customers will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That is with our friends from FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com today. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you with props, like I was mentioning there. Here we go. I got
nice hat, by the way.
It's a great hat. I'm going to wear this hat today. This, I don't think they'll be wearing it at the Creighton basketball game tonight, which they start their season. The scout on UTRGV was that they shoot a lot of threes, right? They against Nebraska.
That's what I saw on television Monday night.
Okay, so I'll note that, but I don't think I can wear this while doing various things for Creighton tonight. But it's a good hat, and I'm going to wear it all day long. And I'm going to carry around my hockey puck. That's my story. All right. So Dana Holgorsen discussion. You mentioned it right there at the end of the first segment. Let's go more like holistic. What does this mean for Matt Rhule, Matt Rhule era, the program? Like, what is this a sign of, and how important is the move?
Well, what I was trying to say at the end of the last segment about what this is like for Rhule, I think it's unlike anything that he's dealt with as a head coach. Now, there were things as a college head coach. There were definitely things with the Panthers that he dealt with that were similar to this. They had a change at offensive coordinator that was kind of a mess. And some of that was instructed from ownership. And like, you don't deal with these kinds of things. Well, you can, but he's not dealing with these kinds of things at Nebraska. This is a significant challenge for him. So we talked a few minutes ago about what the dynamic will be like, or could be like, if it's not run smoothly, if you don't take all the precautions necessary, if you don't have a great grasp of what's at stake between Holgorsen, let's just say Satterfield. I don't know that Glenn Thomas really even comes into this picture. He's the co-OC. He's coaching the quarterbacks. He's probably going to continue to coach the quarterbacks no matter what happens with Dana. I mean, Dana's past is with quarterbacks. He's been with Graham Harrell, with Geno Smith, and who's the other one that I'm missing? There's
Case
a big
Keenum.
Name. Case Keenum was a record-setting quarterback.
Oh yeah.
Also, and played in the NFL. So Dana's proven as a QB's guy. I think Thomas is, at least for now, going to continue to work with the quarterbacks. But all the other stuff has this possibility of uncomfortableness, and that's where Rhule comes in, because he's got to be up front with Sat. Like, Rhule has got to say to Marcus Satterfield, as Holgorsen is walking around the offices at the Osborne complex, all right, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not BSing you, Marcus. Like, you either, I mean, if he's out at the end of the year, like, probably tell him, like, we're going to try to still have a job for you. I'm going to help you find something somewhere else. Like, you can still work at Nebraska. Like, we're going to make this the best for you. And at least then, like, the tension is out of the air. I'm not saying that would make it for a great situation, but you got to be up front. I think it's critical how Matt Rhule manages this moment.
That's a great point. We've seen each of the last two regimes at Nebraska not handle this exact moment really well. In Riley's case, it wasn't his fault, because his longtime defensive coordinator was basically fired by the athletic director. So
and then we got the Bob Diaco experience.
That didn't work.
Cannot be that.
No. And then, with Frost, they're just, toward the end of, he made some coaching staff changes and, shifted staff a lot during his time. He had a bunch of different coordinators and people that were working with him.
We got the Mark Whipple experience.
There just wasn't a lot of communication there, and it's just that you said it. It's communication is key. So if I think that has been a strong suit of the Rhule tenure, right? He's a good communicator, and everyone knows that at the end of the day, whatever happens under everyone in his program knows that whatever happens in those walls come back to him. So he's making all the decisions, and he's communicating all those decisions. So I don't think this will go down that same road of being as weirdly ugly as those two sort of transitions were.
Those were both just a mess. I mean, the Whipple one, I think some of the ugliness of it got lost in the fact that Frost was flaming out in 22. But
Frost was angry the whole time. He was
before
mad
he got fired.
he was forced to do these things, basically. That was
and then even after he was out, I mean, there was tremendous tension between Whipple and Mickey Joseph, the interim coach, about how things should be run. And you had outside difficulties too, because Whipple was having some health issues. It was just like it was set up to fail. And I think the Diaco thing was set up to fail too. So that's what Nebraska needs to avoid. No matter what this is with Holgorsen, Rhule has to manage it in a way that sets it up to succeed.
Yeah, and I
think he will.
This might look like weird, and when we look back at this in 3 years or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like Rhule, that is one of Rhule's things that he actually does pretty well. He organizes and communicates. And everybody who works for he tends to have younger. This is different in the sense that he tends to have younger coaches on the staff who are like hungry and who Rhule is he works those coaches hard, right? Mm-hmm. And so how does it look if Dana Holgorsen's the offensive coordinator and he's been there, done that? Does he get sort of like full, kind of autonomy of the offense? Like that will have to be sort of figured out as well. Obviously, it ultimately comes back to Rhule, but Rhule, from an offensive football perspective, probably doesn't think the same way as Dana Holgorsen. They have different priorities. So that stuff has to be smoothed out if we do go down that road. But as far as the transition is concerned, if there is to be a transition, I don't know that I'm worried about that one too much.
The first time that I saw Matt Rhule and Dana Holgorsen together was last January. And it was, I remember I remember the date in the event because it was the first time that Nash Hutmaker wrestled for Mark Manning's team. And Holgorsen came to visit Lincoln, and they were at the stadium, and they drove over to the Bob Devaney Sports Center together, Rhule, Holgorsen, and a couple of staffers, and walked in, and most of the coaching staff was there, and a bunch of players were there, including Dylan Raiola. And seeing them sit next to each other was just kind of an odd sight. Uh-huh. You have Dana with the hair, and he's got very much a persona about him. Like if you don't know about Dana Holgorsen, go read up on Dana Holgorsen. He's a character, and he has been. Now he's 53. Maybe things are a little different than when he was running around Lubbock, Texas, or Stillwater, Oklahoma, or even like Morgantown, West Virginia. But they kind of seem like an odd marriage. Personality-wise, they know each other. Rhule was at Baylor at the same time that Holgorsen was in the Big 12. So, but I mean, I think Matt Rhule gets along with pretty much anybody. It just would be a different kind of arrangement and a different dynamic than what he's typically had with his assistant coaches.
Well, and he said on Monday, and I think we're going to still play this clip during the show. He said on Monday, he will stop at nothing, right?
Like whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. We'll get this done.
This falls under that category.
Yeah. So let's do that when we return. We'll finish up this discussion and play that clip for you when we return here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. All right, it's Sapper here for ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. I sound like a scientist now. It's this byproduct, not the dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. So then pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this product down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and then you'll feel your best tomorrow. So that is the exact order of operation here. You drink the pre-alcohol ZBiotics at the start of the night. Then you have your fun. Do whatever it is. Obviously, hydrate. Get a good night of sleep. Put yourself in a good position, right? That's all you could do. It's all you could ask. You put yourself in a good position to win the next morning. ZBiotics is going to help you do that. You'll wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege. Learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. The code Locked On College. It's backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege. Remember, use the code Locked On College. That's going to get you 15% off at checkout.
And I would like to tell you about Game Time. Can you believe it's basketball season? I know you can believe it. You've got a game tonight. You had games a couple of days ago. I have not been to a game yet, but I'm looking forward to it because not much in sports matches the excitement of a great college basketball game. Game Time is here to make tickets getting to basketball games so much easier. And it offers seats, tickets for concerts, shows, not just sports, football, everything that you are looking for this fall going into the winter. Check out the feature of the Game Time app called Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of options. How about that upcoming Creighton, Nebraska game in downtown Omaha, or an NBA game? Game Time allows you to customize your seat in the basketball arena. I love that you can get curated deals to make it easier to find the best prices. Game Time provides seat views before you buy. They've got the super deal. It's a unique feature that you need to examine your tickets, find information about event cancellation protection, job loss protection. Wow. It's always got the lowest price guarantee also. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game Time.
All right, it's back. It's game time for us as well. Let's lock in. Counter Hamper, Mitch Sherman with you. A few more minutes left here on
Mailbag
the
tomorrow.
On a Wednesday. Don't forget, yes, get your questions in for the mailbag tomorrow. We will still make picks on Friday for other games, but it'll be a little less intrusive, I suppose, on the episode. But we'll do it. So as we get into the first weekend, or I guess the second weekend of November. So we just mentioned this before the break. I thought this was the quote, the clip that really stole the press conference on Monday from Matt Rhule, talking about just sort of the overarching view. And a lot of people took it as, Matt Rhule was pointing fingers at players and he was throwing his players under the bus. You could be the judge, but we'll play this clip here now and see what you think of it afterwards.
I've prided myself over the years of like, we're consistent. And I thought last year, like we were consistent, like we were, and now this year it's not quite as consistent. And, you're probably not supposed, head coach 101, you're not supposed to say those things in a press conference, but I owe it to everyone to be honest. Like I'm trying to find a way to get the players to be more consistent. And so this is probably the first time you guys have heard me say the players have to play. Like they have to play. They can't just say like, oh man, did you read what they're saying about Sat? Like, but you are Sat. You are the offense. You're out on the field. Like Jacory's not worried about what play call Sat's calling. Jacory's out there flying around, right? Like, so you can't throw a bubble out in the perimeter and a guy's not blocking. It's one man against another man. I got to block you but all that being said, it's not consistent enough.
Listening back to that, Mitch, for like the 45th time now, or a part of that for the 45th time now, what's funny when he gives examples of players who are doing it the right way, he always talks about players that are probably in their first or second year in the program. He talks about Jacory Barney. He talks about Dylan Raiola.
There's a lot of that. I mean, I would say that I've heard him mention Ty Robinson.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
But yeah, I think his tendency off the bat in the context of like what he was saying right there is to look at a young guy who just like hasn't been indoctrinated with a lot of the negativity that exists around the Nebraska program. I think that's why he early in the year, it was Dylan. It was, Dylan's setting the standard and the other guys have to keep up with him. And, that talk has diminished.
Look good in hindsight, by the way.
But now it's Jacory. Now it's Jacory doesn't care about the calls that are being, the plays that are being called. But it's a good point. So do you see that any different, like what he had to say there in the context or after we got this information about Dana Holgorsen coming in to help?
Well, only in the not really different, only in the sense that what he's talking about is not like X's and O's, how to play offense or how to he's talking about like playing football. He's talking about guys going out there and executing whatever it might be. whether it's Sat's offense, Rhule's offense, Dana Holgorsen's offense, some other guy's offense. Like it's either whatever offense you do, you're going to have to execute it. And I think what he's frustrated the most about right now is that Nebraska can't really execute simple things that they're asking him to do, and that he knows that they're able to do because they have done it before and they do it pretty much daily in practice. And I think so, like that is a thing that is important no matter who your offensive coordinator is. So the question becomes like, is Nebraska potentially going through a scheme change, on the offensive side of the ball? Like, is that going to give them a fresh enough start to be able to execute? Like can they basically out scheme their mental state? Like that's a weird thing, but maybe that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, they can't change much in the 2 weeks before Nebraska goes to USC. I mean, if we're talking the scheme thing, that whatever scheme Dana would help implement would have to come after this season. It's funny, like as we wind down this conversation for the day about Holgorsen and Phil Snow and what's going on inside Nebraska's football headquarters here in this bye week, and like is the potential there to look like some kind of a different outfit when they go to LA next week. I saw this tweet in the aftermath, a couple hours. This was actually last night after the Holgorsen stuff had settled, and it was from Rob Zatechka, fellow podcaster from the Doc Talk podcast, former Husker, all around great dude. So he retweeted Pete Thamel's tweet about Holgorsen that was posted in the morning, and Zatechka says, "This is like winning the offseason during the season." And so it's funny because
a good PR move, isn't it?
Because that's what Nebraska does every offseason, is it finds these ways to generate energy and positivity, and we all feel like nothing could be, all of the problems are gone, because of some news cycle in February, and then another one in April, and then another one in May and July. And here we are in November, and this is like one of these things that happens in the off season. Like they could have waited until January to have done this, and it would have got people all excited, but let's just do it in November after a 3-game losing streak.
You know what, gosh, and I've given a lot more thought to that too over the last couple of days. If people aren't asking, and demanding that something change on offense, he's been able to go through builds at Temple and Baylor. They weren't like this. They were different. They didn't have the intense scrutiny. I don't know what would be the conversation, if there would be a conversation at all, because probably he'd be able to do this in silence and work through whatever problems that they had. Now, the problem that Nebraska, I feel like the grand problem that Nebraska is facing is in part because it's like intertwined into the fact that there is so much attention, I think, on the program. So we're talking about players and mental state and stuff like that. So it's like totally unique to what Matt Rhule has experienced before. But I do feel like there's a part of me that feels like whatever transition that happens is it's really delicious red meat for people to eat up the last 3 weeks of the season and then into the off season. But Nebraska's problems are going to be the same, so they have to address that still.
He accomplished 2 things at once. He threw everybody a bone who needed it, who needed something. And then he also is taking a real step to try to fix this with an urgent state of mind. Like, you can't wait till December. You can't wait till January. It's got to be addressed now, because college football is a different place than it was 5 years ago.
And that's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
get out. Yeah. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin's got everything you need to get through this week 11 of an exciting season. You can find the link to that show, the Locked On College Football show, in the description of this show, so there's no need to search. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.